I am Laurel, a writer by profession, and I have always been a guardian of my friends' children. Among them is Mary, a single mother, and her son Maxwell, who has a small crush on me. One evening, as I was house-sitting for Mary while she was away on business, I settled into her cozy guest room for the night. The house was peaceful, and I looked forward to a restful sleep. As I drifted off, I felt a familiar presence in the room. It was Maxwell, who had snuck in to say goodnight. "Laurel," he whispered, "I know you're still awake. Can I sleep with you tonight?" I smiled at his innocent request. "Of course, sweetheart. Come on in." Maxwell climbed into the bed, snuggling close to me. I wrapped my arm around him, feeling the warmth of his small frame against mine. We stayed like that for a while, lost in our thoughts, until Maxwell's breathing evened out, and I knew he had fallen asleep. As I lay there, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of affection for this child who had become like family to me. I promised myself that I would always be there for him, to protect him and guide him as he grew up. But then, something strange happened. I felt Maxwell stir beside me, and before I knew it, he had shifted closer to me. His small hand reached out and brushed against my cheek, sending a shiver down my spine. I froze, unsure of what to do. Maxwell's voice was barely above a whisper. "Laurel, I think I love you." I was taken aback by his words. I knew that Maxwell had a crush on me, but I had never expected him to say something like this. I felt a mix of emotions, surprise, confusion, and a hint of fear. "Maxwell," I said gently, "I care for you too, but you're like a little brother to me. It's not appropriate for us to feel this way about each other." Maxwell looked up at me, his eyes filled with sadness. "I know, but I can't help how I feel. I just wanted to tell you." I could see the pain in his eyes, and I knew that I had to handle this situation with care. I pulled him closer to me, holding him tight as I whispered soothing words into his ear. "It's okay, Maxwell. I'm here for you, no matter what. We can figure this out together." Maxwell nodded, and soon he fell back asleep, his small body pressed against mine. I stayed awake for a long time after that, lost in thought. I knew that I had to talk to Mary about this, but I didn't want to hurt her or Maxwell. The next morning, I woke up early and made breakfast for Maxwell. We sat at the kitchen table, eating our pancakes in silence. I could feel the tension between us, and I knew that I had to address it. "Maxwell," I said, "we need to talk about what happened last night." Maxwell looked up at me, his eyes filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Laurel. I didn't mean to say those things. I just couldn't help it." I reached out and took his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "It's okay, Maxwell. I understand how you feel. But you're only 12 years old, and it's not appropriate for you to have those kinds of feelings for someone like me." Maxwell nodded, looking down at his plate. "I know. I just don't know what to do." I took a deep breath, knowing that I had to tell Mary about this. "Maxwell, I think we need to tell your mom about what happened. I don't want to keep this from her, and I think she needs to know." Maxwell looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear. "But she'll be so mad at me. I don't want her to be disappointed in me." I shook my head, trying to reassure him. "Your mom will understand, Maxwell. She loves you, and she just wants what's best for you. We can talk to her together, and I'll be there to support you." Maxwell nodded, and we finished our breakfast in silence. Afterward, we went to find Mary, who was working in her home office. She looked up as we entered, a smile on her face. "Hey, you two. How was your night?" I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "Mary, there's something we need to tell you." Mary looked at me, her smile fading. "What is it, Laurel?" I took Maxwell's hand, giving it a squeeze. "Maxwell had a nightmare last night, and he came to me for comfort. But things got a little confusing." Mary looked at Maxwell, her eyes filled with concern. "Maxwell, what happened?" Maxwell looked down at his feet, his shoulders slumped. I told Laurel that I love her. But I know it's not right. I just can't help how I feel." Mary looked at me, her eyes filled with shock. "Laurel, is this true?" I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. "Yes, it's true. But I want you to know that I care for Maxwell, and I would never do anything to hurt him. I think we need to talk about this, all of us together." Mary nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "Okay. Let's sit down and talk about this." We all sat down at the kitchen table, our hearts heavy with the weight of what had happened. We talked for hours, hashing out our feelings and trying to understand what had happened. In the end, we came to a decision. Maxwell would see a therapist to help him understand his feelings and work through them. I would be there to support him, as a friend and mentor. And Mary would do her best to support both of us, as a mother and a friend. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. We all knew that we had to put Maxwell's needs first, and do whatever we could to help him through this difficult time. As the days passed, things started to return to normal. Maxwell began seeing a therapist, and I continued to be there for him, as a friend and mentor. We watched movies together, played video games, and talked about everything from school to books to life. Over time, Maxwell's feelings for me started to fade. He began to see me as a friend, rather than a romantic interest. And I was relieved, knowing that our relationship could finally return to its original form. Months passed, and Mary and I grew closer as well. We started to spend more time together, going on walks, having dinner together, and talking about our lives and our dreams. One evening, as we sat on Mary's porch, watching the sun set over the horizon, she turned to me and took my hand. "Laurel, I want you to know how much I appreciate you. You've been such a good friend to me and Maxwell, and I don't know what I would do without you." I smiled, feeling my heart swell with affection. "Mary, I feel the same way about you. You're like a sister to me, and I cherish our friendship." Mary looked at me, her eyes filled with warmth. "Laurel, there's something I want to tell you. I know it's crazy, and we've both been through so much, but I think I'm in love with you." I looked at her, my heart racing. I had never expected to hear those words from her, but as I looked into her eyes, I knew that they were true. "Mary, I love you too." And with those words, our friendship blossomed into something more. We became partners, lovers, and best friends, supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. Together, we faced everything that came our way, from Maxwell's teenage years to our own personal struggles and triumphs. And through it all, we knew that we had each other, and that was all that mattered. In the end, our story was one of love, friendship, and growth. It was a journey that had started with a simple crush, but had grown into something much deeper and more meaningful. And as we sat there, hand in hand, watching the sun set over the horizon, we knew that our love would last a lifetime.